Hello all, it's James Johnson, aka Sulphur Blade. Welcome back to my channel, welcome back to my content, and welcome back, or well, shouldn't say welcome back, but welcome to Path of Exile 2. It's been a little bit since I have done a video. However, I've been enjoying Path of Exile 2 so much that I felt a need to jump in and show off the game a bit, especially the warrior. So I've got some mixed opinions on the warrior, and I'll go into that as I jump in and show you how it plays. The warrior itself is, well, Path of Exile 2 is a game, the ARPG game that I've always wanted. I've always wanted to be able to, well, not be pigeonholed and locked into being a specific type of warrior or a specific type of class in general. I've always wanted the ability to be more than just a warrior, for instance, and in this game I am more than just a warrior, and I'll show you that. We're gonna jump in here real fast, and I'm just gonna find some mobs, and you can witness what this warrior does.
Monstrous fiend!
That's right, I'm casting spells. I can also go up to something and beat it over the head with a hammer, but I can also cast spells. And it's a nice combination, actually. Because if I freeze something, I can smash it with my hammer, if I can hit it, and see how it broke into ice cubes? Or I could use a spell like this and just blow them up, which is probably easier than my hammer is anyway. Okay, so what kind of weird build have I made here? Well, I've made a warrior that kind of dabbles in sorcery skills, or mage skills, whatever this game calls their mage. And yeah, I find I enjoy it quite a bit. It's a very fun warrior build. So part of this was to show off this build. Another part was just to talk about the warrior in general. So let's go ahead and we'll open up the skill panel, and I'll show you the strange things I'm running. So the mace, it was my normal weapon swing, and I have in there currently, I have cold infusion, which means that when I swing my hammer, I am doing 25% of my damage as cold damage, which helps me to freeze things even if I'm not casting a frost spell. I can just beat them up, and you'll see that I'm stacking up cold damage. Let's go ahead and demonstrate that here with a mob.
Yes! Another one! He's under there!
Okay, well, I want to go this way, I think. Perfect. See the cold stacking up? It's up to 37%, so it wasn't enough to freeze them, but it helps when you're attempting to freeze larger monsters, like bosses, for instance. Being able to freeze a boss, which you can do in this game, can basically immobilize and allow you to beat on that boss for quite a bit. And at the same time, it allows me to use a different spell, which does a lot of damage to something that's frozen. And I'll go ahead and show that off here next. So that's... there we go. So Ice Nova is this little AoE effect here. It doesn't do much damage. As you can see, it only does 18 DPS. It does hardly nothing as far as damage is concerned. However, it's kind of integral to the build because it's got 50% more freeze buildup as well as 50% increased freeze duration on enemies. So this is the skill that really I'm using to freeze large packs of mobs. Because it's an AoE effect, it can freeze a large swath of the battleground, and that's awesome. It's a great skill to have with a warrior. I can't say enough about Ice Nova and how much I love pairing it with my warrior. It's really fun. Shockwave Totem. This is actually part of the warrior toolkit. This is not part of the warrior toolkit, but this is. This is probably the most important skill a warrior can have. And you're like, why? Why is this the most important skill a warrior can have? Well, that's because warriors are a little bit... what's the word I'm looking for? They're kind of gimp when you're fighting a boss. In that the game doesn't feel specifically well balanced for melee classes and boss fights. That's to say that bosses hit like Mack trucks, no matter what class you are. And when a boss hits like a Mack truck, it doesn't matter that you're a warrior and you have big fancy armor that's, you know, and you have all the health and all this other stuff, because even with all your health and your fancy armor, the bosses can and will one-shot you if you close into melee distance. And because your weapon swing is rather slow, trying to run up and hit a boss when its back is turned and then step away doesn't tend to work very well, because the bosses in this game are very quick. They go through their special moves very quickly, and if you move into melee range with a warrior, with a melee character, you're going to end up in a situation where you're going to likely end up with far more damage being done to yourself than you end up doing to the enemy.
Power!
I find fire mages, like these thought mages, they tend to really tear me up. Anyway, what was I going on about? Oh, the fact that warriors are a little bit gimp when it comes to fighting bosses. And that's why this totem is so important when it comes to boss fights. Because you can put it down, and then you can just end up going into this constant rolling situation where whenever you're doing the rolling animation, you can't really be hit by anything. And so you're permanently safe. So you roll around while you have your totem out, and the totem has a big, fairly large AoE and does a pretty decent amount of damage. It's respectable. Maybe not as much as a character. And so what does this make? This makes very long and very boring boss battles. As you're rolling around the boss, waiting for your totem to do enough damage to kill it, which makes a boss battle last a long, long time. However, it's one of the only effective tools that you have as a warrior in order to actually kill the bosses instead of being killed by the bosses, which can make playing the warrior a little bit frustrating. The warrior is all kinds of fun when you're clearing regular junk like this.
Steel yourself!
Damn those fire mages. Anyway, this should give you a good idea of the difficulty that is part of the normal PoE experience. These were just random mobs that I'm clearing. Uh-oh, I backed into other mobs. And I have no health to rely on. Oh, that's not just any mob, that's a... This kind of sucks. I can't get any charges for my health unless I kill something. There's nothing to kill that's easily killable. Alright. Well, we're gonna see a mini boss fight here. This is what you end up doing against the bosses. Waiting for your totem to kill stuff. This is how fighting bosses works. You come out of the roll animation, you throw up a totem, and then you roll around. And I wasn't expecting to show that concept here, but I'm having to show that concept against just a regular clearing of bosses because I played poorly. But yeah, Path of Exile 2 is no joke. It's a difficult game. And warriors are, I think, squishier than they should be. But, thankfully, we can steal skills from other classes to, well, do things that warriors wouldn't normally be able to do. So we don't have to rely on our big hammer if we don't want to.
No worry.
There we go. Alright, so let's head over here by the checkpoint so that I could talk without having to fight, because I'm not very good at this pace of action and talking at the same time. You know, War on the Sea or other games that I play are less action-oriented, where this is a far more action-oriented game, which requires this old man's thought more than normal games that I would play on the channel. Alright, so this is a combination of kind of a look at how PoE 2 plays. You can see it's quite difficult. It is a very challenging game. And then I wanted to talk about the warrior being a very fun class to play, in my opinion. And that's not just because the warrior's fun, it's because PoE 2 is fun, and it allows you to be able to mix and match tools from other classes' toolkits into your class to make the character you've always wanted to make. Now, some might say I've made a GIMP warrior. That in order to have these mage specific skills, that would require me to have invested in intelligence, that I could have invested into strength to possibly have a warrior more standard and more meta that isn't as weak or frail. However, at the same time, I don't think strength really makes a warrior stronger outside of his natural ability to hit with his weapon. Of course, the more strength you have, the more weapon damage you're going to have. But armor-wise, I have a fair amount of extra perks in the armor tree. And so I should be able to take a hit as well as any other warrior, regardless of how much strength I have. I don't believe strength dictates your armor class at all, if I'm being honest. Anyway, so with that being said, I guess to make a long story short here, PoE 2 is fun because it allows you to mix and match skills from all the classes to make the class of your dreams. And the warrior itself is a bit difficult to play when you go up against bosses, because it's got a very slow weapon swing. And having a very slow weapon swing in these boss fights makes it so that you can't really use your weapon. And much of a warrior's abilities rely on its weapon. And much of those warrior abilities that are weapon-based are very slow. And very slow things in the boss fights of PoE 2 do not work very well, because you need mobility, you need to be able to move around and avoid the very well telegraphed skills that the bosses do. So if you're paying attention, you can and will fight your way through the boss battles fine. But the bosses have a lot of health. The boss battles are very long, and there are many different skills that the bosses cycle through that you have to get used to and learn how they work. So no matter what class you are, you're going to be at least spending the first minute or two of your boss battle very defensively as you try to figure out the cycle of things that the boss is going to send at you. And then that's going to change as the boss battle progresses, because if you get the boss down at certain health percentages, he throws extra things into his repertoire normally, and so there's new things that catch you off guard through the course of the boss battle. Make a long story short, a lot of people love the boss battles in this game. And if you're not playing a warrior, it's probably easier to enjoy them. But as a warrior, they're very long, because you have less in your toolkit that you can use on the boss than a lot of other classes. Even me, as a warrior who's not standard, where I have a lot more ranged abilities than your typical warrior would have, even my fights against bosses take a long time. And I would say that a lot of my abilities that I have as a warrior are I would say a lot of these abilities that I've ended up picking up aren't just because are to help me with fighting bosses. So I'm using a lot of tools from other classes toolkits to down bosses, because the warrior's toolkit is not very, doesn't work very well against bosses. So yeah, this has been a first look, I guess, at PoE 2, which I can't say enough good things about. I know a lot of what I've said sounds bad, but at the same time, I'm having a blast. I'm loving my warrior, even if it's unusual. It's a very fun build that's out of the ordinary. That's very different. The boss battles are my one drawback, and that's probably because I'm playing a warrior. But otherwise, PoE 2 is just a phenomenal game that I just can't say enough about. So at this point, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to go back out here, and I'm going to clear a little bit more of the mobs. And you can see some more of this warrior build in action. And then I'll go... well, I think I've showed the important things about this build that make it what it is and how it works. I think people can replicate this warrior build at this point, because the main thing is the Frost Nova. Putting those skills into the Frost Nova is really the meat and potatoes of this build, because that is what allows me to freeze most of the junk. And otherwise, I'm just a normal warrior. Otherwise. I'm just clearing stuff for XP right now. I'm in no rush to go down and fight the boss down at the bottom here. Alright, this is probably as good a place as any to wrap up this episode. So this has been a look at PoE 2. Fantastic new game that's currently just been released in early access. The early access price is, I think, $29.99. Once it leaves early access, it's going to be a free-to-play game. So if you're the patient type and you can manage to wait, you can wait for it to go free-to-play. And yeah, I wasn't that patient on this game because, well, I've been eagerly awaiting this game. I do enjoy ARPGs, and this particular ARPG I think is the best ARPG to ever release, and I do really mean that. This has been absolutely a phenomenal game that I have enjoyed every second of. I can't get enough of it. I've sunk 20 hours into it already, and this is only day 2 of the game being released. So that should say just how much I'm enjoying the game. So yeah, can't say enough good things about Path of Exile 2. Anyway, I'm James Johnson, aka Sulphurblade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please smash that like button, consider subscribing, and until the next time, all peace.